Hello, everyone. Digital anchor Rachel Ramsey here in the NBC4i Digital Center. Welcome to our new show, Columbus Business Beat. Joining me now is Mark Summerson, managing editor of Columbus Business First. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So this show is also part of our partnership with Business First, where every week we're going to talk about everything business and the growth of Columbus and Central Ohio. So before we get started talking about some of the stories that Columbus Business First has been covering, you know, Business First has been around for several years, focusing again on business, the housing market, and much more. Kind of talk to us about Business First, how it started, and where it is today.
Sure. We started 41 years ago in Columbus. We're part of a chain called American City Business Journals that's headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have 40 papers around the country. A couple of them are digital only in Chicago, New York, and Cleveland. The rest are all newsrooms. And basically, we cover business, everything business to business. We consider our readers to be CEOs and those who want to be CEOs. We cover everything from restaurants and retail to commercial real estate is our bread and butter. We also cover science and tech. You name it. If it's business related in Central Ohio, Columbus Business First covers.
I was going to say basically everything.
Yes.
So the first story we want to talk about that you guys are covering is German Village Apartments. Kind of talk about what's happening there.
Yeah, this is on Livingston Avenue. It's right now a very small office building that has been empty for quite some time. Mershaw Development has come in and for several months now have gone back and forth with the German Village Commission to try to create an apartment complex called Cedar Square. What they want to do is build a 4-story apartment building with 81 units. It will be 2 buildings next to each other. The last time they went before the German Village Commission was in March, and it was 96 units and a little different looking. They basically have a back and forth with this commission, like commissions all over Central Ohio. Before you get to city council for a zoning change or whatever, you have to go before an area commission. And area commissions try to make sure that whatever design is coming in fits in the character of the neighborhood, and no other neighborhood in Central Ohio has that character they want to maintain like German Village. It's very quaint, it's got a lot of bricks, and they don't want too tall buildings. They don't want things that don't mix and match with the existing buildings, so they sent them back to the drawing board. And this week they went back before the commission with some new designs, and the commissioners seem to really say, okay, we like where this is going. We're not quite there yet. We want to make sure that everything matches perfectly. And so, yeah, the demo could take place at some point, and we could see 81 units. We're not sure what the timetable is because, again, this hurdle is an area commission before they even get to city council.
And I was going to say, too, because you mentioned it, German Village, it's an area where you definitely know you're walking into German Village because of the historic buildings, the bricks. So did this, I haven't seen the sketch of, or the rendering of the first proposal. Was it kind of just, it didn't fit? Was it the exterior just not there, basically?
I think it fit, but I'm not a commission member and I don't live in German Village. So I thought it was very similar to what they have. But again, this commission, like if you live in German Village and want to change your garage, you're going before this commission.
Okay.
If you live in German Village and want to change the color of your house, you go before this commission. Their job, they believe, is to make sure German Village remains German Village. So this is part of this overall effort by the city called Zone In, where they're changing all the zoning rules to make sure that dense mixed use and definitely residential is going up across Central Ohio. It's more difficult in certain places, and in German Village, it's a very tough road to go. And yeah, they're starting to work closely now with the commission to make sure that they're happy. There were some residents who were there who said this building would look perfect in Upper Arlington, but not German Village. And the architects came back and said, all right, challenge met. We will make this building, or these 2 residential buildings, we will make this fit in German Village.
Okay, so now we'll just have to wait and see for that.
Yes.
So another story that you guys are covering has to do with this old school building that is now converting into apartments. So kind of tell me a little bit about that.
This is super cool. This is one of those great reuse projects that take something old and make it new again. You remember Central High School then became COSI. Similar idea. This is also in Franklinton. This is Woda Cooper working and they bought this building a few years back at a pretty good price. And they've gotten all sorts of tax credits for being historical, for turning something around and reuse. This is a 1908 building that's been empty since 2013. It's now open. They completely kept the actual old Starling Middle School. Now they've added 2 more residential buildings that are very similar looking and fit well into that neighborhood, and it's called Starling Yard. So there are 97 apartments. 45 of the units are actually in the old school, and they were able to keep some really cool tin ceilings from the original school. They're blackboards. They have the welcome to Starling, and I believe their mascot is, I can't remember now. But yeah, their name is up. I think it's Mustangs, but it's up on the wall. It's very cool. It reminds you of walking into your old middle school, but you can live there now.
Yeah.
And this is also for people who earn 30 to 80% of the area median income. So the rents start at $401 for a 1-bedroom and go up to about $1,295 for a 3-bedroom. So it's more affordable. This is something the city absolutely loves to see an old building converted. And if you remember, Woda Cooper is also working on redoing the YMCA building downtown and turning that into residential. So they're taking some really cool old buildings and doing some really cool things with them.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of sad sometimes when we have these buildings that have been around Central Ohio and Columbus for several years that have kind of been sitting empty, but you don't want them to get torn down, especially like a school where people went to school. So it's really cool to see them kind of turn those into apartments. I'm from Coshocton, so they're kind of doing a similar project. A different company is doing something with an old school, and they're turning it into apartments too.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it with the other buildings that are next to it. How many units are in those? Do we know?
Yeah, those are 2 3-story buildings. There's 52 units in those and 45 in the old school, and that should equal, my math is a little off, but 97 total units. And it is cool because I grew up in Columbus. I remember in the 1970s, a lot of old buildings got torn down and turned into surface parking lots, which if you go to downtown, you'll see a lot of surface parking lots. And the same in Franklinton. A lot of historic buildings came down, and this is just a great reuse of a neat old building.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree. I can't wait to see that. I know a lot of people are going to be interested in that too. Mark, thank you so much. Of course, we're going to be back after this break. We talked to NBC4 Jared Smallley talking about public transportation here in Central Ohio. Rachel Ramsey back here in the NBC4i Digital Center with Jared Smallley, again, talking everything about Columbus and the growth of Columbus. Jared has a lot of stories that he covers about the growth of Columbus. So I know you recently had one air about public transit and rail here in Columbus. So kind of talk a little bit about that.
You know, this is an idea that was born earlier this year, especially you mentioned here on this forum, our digital platform with NBC4 Columbus. We talk a lot about unique ways that we can tell people the story of the city in maybe some ways they hadn't thought of before. So you take a very broad view. And one of those broad view ideas was about transportation, because this city is uniquely transportation troubled. We are extraordinarily car-centric, and more so than most cities in America. We are the biggest city in the country without passenger rail service. And there's a little bit of debate about that, because the city of Phoenix technically doesn't have passenger rail to the city, but they have it to a suburb of the city. So technically Columbus is the only one with no service at all. Phoenix, by the way, also has an inner city method of train travel, commuter rail. We have none of that in Columbus. We basically have what amounts to, the COTA system, bus system, and then pretty much just cars. And the theory being, if this area grows by 750,000 more people, which Morpsey projects that it will over the next 25 years, could we afford to put 750,000 more cars on the road than we have right now? And when you think about that, the topic of transportation, becomes far more pressing than you might realize right now. And that's how the rail topic came up, because it's one of those methods that doesn't exist here.
Yeah, and I know that it's been kind of a topic that's been talked about for years, Jared, kind of, lawmakers especially saying they're for it, and then others say they don't want it. Kind of talk about that too, because I feel like it's been a talk for quite some time.
That's exactly what I thought. And so I decided to put that to the test. I went back into our archive system and I just typed in commuter rail or passenger rail and just went to find how many times we have done this story. And it is incredible. I mean, I've had anchors and reporters who haven't worked here in years. I have video of them talking about this same topic, and we are still talking about it today. And to your point, politically, this has been a difficult subject within the state. A long story told quickly. Commuter rail, passenger rail, left Columbus in 1979, and that was because Amtrak service was discontinued here. Amtrak service was continued in many places in the United States in 1979. President Carter at the time wanted to scale down the size of Amtrak and the expenses involved. So they went to look at places that weren't necessarily using it to maximum capacity and then eliminated the service. So Columbus, I was born in 1979. In my lifetime, Amtrak service has not been in Columbus. So that is a big part of why Columbus has been left out of this conversation about how you move people by rail. Some people will laugh at that. It's a technology from the 1800s. What a great idea. But I would invite you to look around the world and see how people move, in particular in Europe, where people are moved daily, frequently by rail travel, not only within their country, but across the continent. And it is a safe, efficient, effective way, also cost-effective, to move people for their destinations. And when you get there, you save the costs of driving a car, parking a car, maintaining a car, registering a car, insuring a car. All of those things that add up are not a part of the conversation when you talk about rail. So when you talk to advocates for rail service, these are the arguments that they make. Politically, though, it has been a different story. When John Kasich became governor in 2011, he won the election at the end of 2010. The next day, he comes out and he's adamant that we are not going to have a train here. There was a $400 million federal investment in high-speed commuter rail that he wanted no part of because he said two things. It'll be too expensive on our end. Obviously, there's local costs involved in the state. He said it's too expensive and there's not enough proof people will ride it. And since that day, Columbus has been fighting a battle to get back up to the point of, can we get passenger rail back in the city? And so that has been a part of the conversation to this day, is there the political will to make it happen? And I would say in our story, the answer is lukewarm. You're going to find, and clearly, we're not telling you anything you don't know. This is a clearly Republican state at the legislative level at the State House. And with the supermajority that Republicans have, Republicans don't agree on what the future of rail should be. There is a very divided group of people who think rail is a great idea to eliminate the headache and the congestion of our roads and another mode to get people where they want to go, while other people say it's just too much money and people just won't ride it after a while. They'll use it once or twice and they'll never use it again, and we'll have wasted all these millions of dollars. So there's sort of this constant push and pull just at the government level before we ever get to, okay, we've got this train now. Where does it go? How does it change our lives? So you're exactly right. The political battle here is generations deep and ongoing.
Yeah, and I know with the discussions of this, there are still plans, I should call them, where if there is a rail, what are some of those plans? Because I know in your story you talked about starting in Columbus. If we had it, where would those routes be?
Great
Where
question.
would they go?
And there are two lines under federal study right now. They are moving through the process, so it's not like these have already been rejected. They are moving forward in their study, and there are two lines in Ohio that are these will be basically the Amtrak lines in Ohio. One is called the 3C and D line, which makes sense if you're an Ohio person. Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dayton, connecting those four major cities within the state with 3 to 5 daily trips on trains, morning and evening. So hypothetically, you could, let's say you want to go If you live in Cleveland, you want to come to Ohio State for a Buckeye game, you could get on the train in Cleveland in the morning, come to Columbus, take a quick either a Coda ride or Uber over to the stadium. You can go to the game, and then, hypothetically, you go back to the train station, which would be at the site of the old Union Station, basically the convention center in downtown Columbus. You would get on the train station there, and you would go back to Cleveland that night. So there's connectivity, 3C and D there. The other line that people have talked about is the CTD line, which is Cleveland, Toledo, and then up to Detroit. So connection in the northern part of the state where Amtrak lines already exist, and some Amtrak trains run currently. It would just be creating a new line of connection between those cities. Columbus is the only city. There is Amtrak service in Cincinnati, but those trains frequently run overnight and very much not on time. And the similar story in Cleveland. So what we're talking about is making not only rail service more frequent, but more relevant in the ability to regionally connect Columbus. The other setback with Columbus rail travel has been there has been very little Midwest connection. There's actually a group of states in the Midwest that belong to this rail alliance. And the states in the Midwest talk to each other about how we orchestrate better connection points between our cities and move people regionally better. Ohio took money, which I think was $25,000, if I'm not mistaken, out of the budget this year to pay for membership to that group. We struck down $25,000. Again, the argument that rail advocates would make, and it's frankly not a bad argument, is we gave $600 million to a billionaire to build a football stadium in Cleveland. We couldn't find $25,000. It gives you an idea of where maybe the political realities are for rail in Ohio if they can't find $25,000 to join a group, because what that group would basically lead to is establishing more frequent travel between cities like Columbus and Chicago, Columbus and Pittsburgh, Columbus, potentially Indianapolis. I'd have to build some train tracks. Most of the railway is gone between Columbus and Indianapolis, but you would have to be in this group to facilitate those conversations, and they're not in it. So that does make it very, tricky of whether the Midwestern regional travel portion would get done on time with this federal study for the intrastate lines that we're talking about here. So, it's an interesting conversation with a lot of politics involved.
Yes. And before we go to break, I do want to ask, is there any sort of, I know, again, this is a discussion in the works, any sort of timeline for when or if this could happen?
Great question, and the answer is no. and that's the unfortunate reality. So there's a number of advocacy groups. One of them is called All Aboard Ohio, and they are working frequently. They have meetings all the time, keeping people aware of what these proposals could be, because I think basically it's an issue of vigilance. They have to stay ready because they don't know when they're going to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or if they have to go back to battle to come up with another proposal to get back in front of legislators and then get money behind those studies to see if there's any future there. And I think that is the battle that advocacy groups are running into, is that they just don't have a really good time frame of when these things are going to happen. But I'll know this. NBC4i.com, we posted this story this week, and the readership of it was extraordinary, and a lot of comments, viewer comments, and a lot for and a lot against.
Yeah.
And every time we update this story on rail, people are talking about it. It doesn't mean they're advocating for it, but they are uniquely interested in it. And that, I think, makes the timeline relevant because people are paying attention to this. It's an issue of, will it ever become a real thing here?
Yeah, and I guess it's just one of those things we just have to wait and see if and when it does happen. Jared, thank you so much for joining me. We'll be back with more after this break. All right, and welcome back to Columbus Business Beat. Mark's joining us here again. We have another story that Columbus Business First has been talking about, housing costs in Upper Arlington. Kind of tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we look at the housing market all the time. We work with Columbus Realtors. They often give us numbers to look at on how many homes are for sale, what the average price is, and how things have changed over time. we started looking specifically at Upper Arlington not long ago because we noticed the house prices were going up. And we were quite amazed. And we did a story last week that showed just how many homes are over the $1 million mark. And it is remarkable. I looked again this morning. There are 88 homes for sale in Upper Arlington. It's a small landlocked little community. 31 of them are over $1 million. That's 35% of the stock in Upper Arlington is now over the $1 million mark.
Wow.
11 of those are over 2 million. 5 of them are over 3 million, and 1 is over 4 million. That's a lot of money for a house. As we know, we need houses of all price points in Central Ohio, but Upper Arlington has really got something going on. I grew up in Upper Arlington. My parents bought their first house there in 1966. They paid $24,000 for it. Things are a little crazy since then.
Yeah.
It is just that really cool neighborhood with lots of trees, lots of parks, really good schools, and people want to move there. So it takes a little longer to sell $1 million house than it does at one at $400,000 or $500,000, but they've got plenty. Then we wanted to compare to see how the other areas, because you might think New Albany, Dublin, and Bexley also have their share of $1 million homes. Right now, New Albany is at 20% of their homes are over $1 million. Dublin's only 12%. Bexley's 21%. Dublin does have the most expensive house in Central Ohio now at $8.5 million.
Wow. 8.5.
You get a lot for that 8.5, though.
Yeah, I'm sure, but that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. I will drive by it. It's as close as I'll ever get to being in that house.
Yeah, I do this fun thing because I'm not looking for a house right now, but when I'm bored, I'll go on like Zillow or something, and I'm like, oh, well, let's see what kind of houses are for sale in Upper Arlington that are not in my budget, but it's fun to look at.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dublin, Upper Arlington, very expensive. I know that you said that the prices are kind of like that in Upper Arlington. Are we seeing kind of an increase, not just in there, but like all over Central Ohio as well?
Oh yeah, all of it's funny because the stock is still fairly low. It's really seller's market still. Some people think it's becoming a buyer's market. But the homes, I live in Clintonville now, and the homes in Clintonville go like that. As soon as they're on the market, they're gone. And we've noticed the average price in Clintonville is pretty close to $400,000 now and rising. The same in other neighborhoods. You look at any neighborhood throughout Central Ohio, the prices of the homes are going up, but the stock is still pretty low. And with the number of people who are moving to Central Ohio, they say we need 50,000 more housing units by a certain number of years, and we're way behind. Home builders are behind right now. People are holding on to their homes because they can't afford to move into another one.
Yeah.
So right now, it's a limited stock, and people have to spend a lot of money, and they have to do it fast if they want that house.
And I don't know if you mentioned it already, Mark. Do you know what the average prices for a home in general, like in Central Ohio or in the Columbus area?
I think it's probably a little less than $300,000 now, but growing.
Yeah.
We are one of those markets that is very hot right now in the housing market. We've topped the U.S. for every now and then, this quarter of this year and this quarter of that year. But yeah, it's getting expensive and harder to get there. And that's why the city is really pushing for more affordable housing and is asking home builders, please do things that you can lower the cost. We will give incentives to help you with that. They're hoping the new zoning codes will help with more dense buildings that have more housing units in them so the price level can go down. But buying a house in Central Ohio, it used to be a starter house was $100,000.
Yeah.
Now a starter house is probably closer to $3,000.
Yeah. Times have definitely changed. I want to ask too, if people are moving to Central Ohio and they're kind of looking for areas that, maybe be cheaper than others. Obviously, everything is a lot more expensive right now. But what are some areas around Central Ohio or in Columbus that the home prices aren't as bad as compared to, Upper Arlington, Dublin, and Bexley?
Columbus is probably still your best bet. Different parts of Columbus. Linden, you can still find homes for under $200,000 there, but those are creeping up as well. One of my coworkers lives in North Linden, and she said the prices of the homes she noticed is starting to go up again too. So really you have to kind of pick and choose, look around the different neighborhoods, see what's kind of being established now, ones that are starting to change. with new amenities and new streets and this and that, you might find a good home for a decent price, but it is costly right now, and there's really doesn't look like any relief coming.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see for when hopefully that relief comes for, especially for those first-time home buyers.
Yes.
Mark, thank you so much for joining me. That's going to do it for our Columbus Business Speed. Of course, the show is produced in partnership with Columbus Business First and is available to watch in multiple places. Each week, the program will premiere at 6:30 p.m. Thursday on NBC4 Columbus streaming channel. The app is available for download on smart TVs with Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. Latest episode will also be available for watching on demand under the featured shows section. The program will be available the following Mondays for additional viewing on NBC4i.com and on NBC4's YouTube channel. For more information, you can visit NBC4i.com/stream. And of course, for more information about Business First and how to subscribe, you can go to ColumbusBusinessFirst.com, or you can scan that QR code on your screen right now. We'll see you all next week right here on the NBC4 Columbus streaming channel.